So, Season 8, of course, episode 1 of Season 8, is also beginning in the post-Larry David era, as we mentioned back at the end of Season 7. Larry David, always, at times, showed signs like he never really wanted to go as far with this as he did, but he did. And, of course, every year was also supposed to be Larry's last year, but Season 7 was just it for him. Of course, though, the rest of the cast didn't feel that they were done yet. Like, Jerry didn't feel so. And, of course, he was definitely nervous that first week when they started shooting again after the summer hiatus was over. And, of course, Larry wasn't there. He appreciates all the work that Larry did for him. But he also, after a while, thought that Larry left him the good opportunity to kind of show that he could do this by himself. As executive producer, run his own show, still, be an actor on it. Of course, the one thing that was cut, though, through Season 8, though, which I think was starting to be cut a little bit also in Season 7, was the stand-up material that Jerry would do at the beginning and end of the episodes. Particularly, of course, because, he wanted to focus more time on writing the shows than writing stand-up material, because that's just what it had to be. So yeah, but he took it by surprise. And, yes, he took on it. He didn't feel they were done yet. But he definitely did mention, like, in, like, the Jerry Seinfeld, the submarine, whatever you want to call it, documentary on the first disc of Season 8, that he did start feeling a little more burned out at the end of Season 8, but he wanted to stick out just for one more year. Which, of course, was when, of course, the season ended. The show ended after Season 9, of course. But we had the foundation, which, of course, Jerry admitted he wasn't too happy with how this episode turned out. And I'll be honest, it's not one of my favorites either. I mean, the one story that I definitely liked, for sure, was the story with Kramer and the karate class. Personally, because I myself did karate for 10 years. Except I did Shotokan. Kramer did Kempo, I think, from what I saw on the sign for the karate place. But, of course, the main story, of course, of this episode was the fallout from Susan's death at the end of Season 7. And, of course, the stone was up. And, they paid their respects at the stone. George thought that was it. He thought he was free as a ghost. He was free. He says it's been 3 months. He's ready to, just pick up life again and be George again. So, of course, he starts, just celebrating being a bachelor again. Even though, of course, I don't know if this is him getting depressed or... No, probably not. I shouldn't joke about that. But, because remember at the end of Season 7, there was that scene where he did try to call Marissa Tomei and basically get sympathy from her and then ask her out on a date, which, of course, did not work out, of course, sadly. But George was off to celebrating, going to movies, he's, just trying to be George again. From before when he got engaged. Jerry also was engaged at the end of Season 7. But, of course, when he picked up Elaine, who was away for 6 weeks in Mexico, gathering information for the JP Ring catalog, she, of course, asks about how his fiance's doing, and then Jerry goes, oh, we broke it off. And basically they said they're just sitting in the coffee shop when they talk, and all of a sudden both said at the same time, I hate you. I'll see it. Takes out the ring, walks away. It was one of the best mutual breakups he's ever had. To which Elaine didn't believe him. And it led to a brief story here where Jerry, while out with George, runs into Dolores, or of course the one who we refer to as Mulva, back in the Junior Mint episode. Same woman, except she had a little more blonder hair now. Jerry runs into her, and of course he kept saying Dolores, so that he remembered her name. And then, she heard they were engaged, and then he goes, didn't work out, Dolores. He goes, oh, I'm sorry, we should get together sometime. To which, Jerry was just like, oh my goodness, like, how did, how that happen? And he realizes it's the engagement. He proved that he can go all the way. So now she's attracted to him again, even though she hated him for the longest time because he couldn't remember her name. He goes out on the one date, and of course, she mentions what happened with the breakup, and he mentions it was mutual, and of course, she thought he didn't learn from being engaged, she said he was still immature, so she breaks off. So then throughout the rest of the episode, Jerry was going after just taking surveys from people, including trying to do George as, if they thought his breakup was mutual or not. But of course, nobody else is really siding with him. But then he thought who had the better breakup story, Jerry or George? And he finds out that George had the better breakup story, which of course, didn't really go anywhere anyways for him. But, so he said that was maybe Jerry's story. George, meanwhile, of course, thinking he's free as a bird again, he then gets a random visit from the Rosses. While his apartment is trashed, he's basically sitting there in his boxers eating chunks of cheese. And the Rosses come to visit, and they mention how they decided to start up the Susan Ross Foundation in honor of her memory. And they want George to sit in on the board of directors. Of course, George was trying to weasel out of it, saying his dues to the Yankees. And then they said, oh, well, the foundation will be based around your free time. And George, of course, is just stuck. He was out, now he's back in. And he finds out the reason why. The reason why was because when they were with Jerry at the cemetery, when they gave George a few minutes alone to talk to Susan, he had no clue to talk about except for the fact how the Yankees swept the Orioles after the All-Star break. He basically quotes Star Trek, which Star Trek was quoted a few times in this episode. Something about how, her memory's still there. We find ways to remember her, and that's when they decided to start the foundation. Of course, George meets with Jerry and flips out on him for doing that, and now, he's back in. And of course, they had referenced, Wrath of Khan in this, and there was this shot in the scene where at the coffee shop, and George is confronting Jerry about this, where they had this. I forgot what they said. I should probably know this too, since I'm a videographer, but I don't think I remember you told. But they had this drum thing where they set the camera aside and set it above Jason Alexander and spun it as he went, God! One of the more priceless shots that Seinfeld's done. Not the only one, of course, they did in this season. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to the pothole. But there's some fancier shots they tried that, of course, took a little bit longer to set up, of course. But obviously the Star Trek quoting did bite them in the butt. George, of course, meanwhile, goes to the meetings and whatnot. He meets the chairman of the board. His name was Wick. W-Y-K-E, I believe it is, W-Y-C-K, one of the two. And of course, through that, he realizes that the Rosses were a lot more wealthier than he thought. And they're saying all the stuff he could have got. They were going to get some of their estates once they got married. They were going to get the townhouse that they had the foundation meetings that once they got married. There were so many things that they were going to get that George realized, he really wishes now she didn't die and she was still here because, George just greedy like that. Excluding that doll collection, I think it was $2.6 million or something like that, or a lot of money. They were going to auction off each doll, of course. I wonder how much the doll that looked like George's mother would have gone for. But that was the main story. The other two stories kind of collided a little bit. There was Elaine's story, which I think could have very well been kind of dealing with Jerry's story, behind the scenes of Jerry, taking over the position as executive producer, with Larry David going and saying wait, I can't do this, even though at first he didn't think he could. Because Elaine's story is, again, she just got back from being in Mexico for 6 weeks to find some stuff for the catalog. But then when she goes to the next meeting with Peterman has a big meltdown, and he just walks out, and then later on calls Elaine and says he's left for Burma, and he puts her in charge of the catalog. And Elaine was just like, I can't do this. This is crazy. But then she was talking to Kramer, and Kramer just started taking up karate. He mentions how he says some story about what made him become better at karate and whatnot. And basically, she took it as an inspiration, and she goes, I've seen Peterman run it. I can do this, do that. She thinks, I got this. I can do it. So she goes through with it and takes over the catalog. Until she then finds out, we all find out later, that Kramer was in a karate class with a bunch of 9-year-olds. And Elaine walks in, he's beating the crap out of 9-year-olds. It came from, I guess, the Skull writers Alec Berg and someone else. They had a friend from college who was like 21 years old, and he was bragging about his new karate class, how he was kicking butt and doing all these great things, flying through the ranks rapidly, just to find out that he's a 21-year-old in a class of a bunch of 8-year-old kids, which I think is a perfect like Kramer story, because that's something like Kramer would be crazy. Like, he in a future episode, upcoming episode in this disc, he just ends up working so he doesn't technically work, but it's just like something like so random like that I'm sure if you put like Jerry or George in there, it wouldn't be as funny. But Kramer, who thinks he's doing the right thing when he's not, but he's so like serious about it, like he's literally like just outdoing 9-year-old kids in karate. But of course I do like the one scene where they're in the car and Kramer's getting carpooled with a bunch of the other kids, and one of the kids begging his mom they can stop getting ice cream afterwards. And everybody starts begging, please, please, please. And Kramer's like, please, please. The thing is, though, is the mother of that child, Joey. Joey was the same kid that Kramer scared at the end of season 7 in the Way Out episode. The thing was when he was wearing the jeans. Joey was the same kid that he had scared. So I don't know why they had them, reunite in this episode or whatnot. But yeah, because of that, then Elaine felt like a doofus afterwards, and her confidence was shot. And of course, there was the introducing of the urban sombrero as well in there. That was actually on the front cover of the catalog, which of course was not getting good responses, as we saw. And that's basically it. That's basically the foundation. Again, the first episode without Larry David. Of course, a few episodes in, everybody's like, oh, Larry's going to come back this week. Or next week. Larry's going to come back. And of course he didn't, but I think Jerry held in there well. The writing, of course, did improve, I think, in the later episodes in this season. Like I said, this episode was fine. This wasn't one of my favorites. My favorite story, though, was definitely the story with Kramer and karate, because, again, I did karate growing up. Oh, yeah, and then, of course, to get revenge, Kramer did get beat up by all the little kids in an alleyway, which I thought was hilarious. And, of course, Elaine, confronted Kramer, basically saying that, she's a doofus, because, she basically thought, his story was believable, only to see that, he just beats up little kids, pretty much, which is not the smoothest thing to do. So yeah, and of course the introducing of the urban sombrero as well. So when Pyramid's going to come back from Burma, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, a lot happened. George thought he was out. He's back in, and he's also regretting it. He's back in the butt because the Rosses had a lot of money. So now he's stuck on this foundation. Jerry, of course, is trying to see if he will believe that his breakup with Jeannie was mutual, and it's biting him in the butt too. Kramer got bit in the butt as well whenever he, got beat by the kids in karate. And Elaine, I wouldn't say she hadn't been bit in the butt so much, but still. But I think her story was definitely probably based on, the story of, Jerry taking over the show, basically. Other than that, not much to really see. Like, there was a lot of Star Trek references there, like the Wrath of Khan. This was also, of course, prior to the closing credits. Just like at the end of season 6. I'm not sure why they didn't just do it here, but they had in the inside look on the season 6 finale, kind of like a tribute to Marjorie Gross. But she didn't die until the summer before this season, when she died of ovarian cancer. So I don't know why they did the tribute thing at the end of season 6, but oh well. But that's the foundation. Next up is the soulmate. The soulmate, of course, includes two neighbors fighting for one person's heart, and also the idea of whether you should have kids or not. And we also get an early sneak peek of Bizarro Jerry. Who is that? You'll find out next in the Soulmate episode. So guys, once again, what are your thoughts on the Foundation episode and the beginning of Season 8? How do you guys feel Jerry Seinfeld did once Larry David departed from the show? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content on my channel, and follow me on Twitter as well, at DemandAirboy93. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your night, and peace out, everybody.